A late summer night's dream. Yo, what's up? Triple upload, let's fucking get it. Today, our third report. Happy Halloween also, I'm all over the place, but today's report is coming from Estromer off Earwood. When this happened, 2006. The drugs used was Datura, gender, male, weight, 200 pounds, dose, 80 seeds. Prior experience, he does claim that he does have a good amount of experience, LSD, mushrooms, DXM, salvia, so it sounds like he has a pretty decent grasp on things. And where this all happened, it was in their flat, I'm pretty sure. So for this report, this was actually thought to be morning glory first, when he takes this, and he does call it morning glory, and I think he does confuse moonflower for morning glory, and I don't know if his friends actually took the morning glory or actual Datura, but you'll see what goes down, and it's pretty obvious that it is Datura, just based off the effects that he does describe. So this is a really interesting report. It's actually pretty humorous too at points, and I think you guys are going to really like it. So, without further ado, let's dive right into it. I like to consider myself a very knowledgeable and for the most part responsible drug user. I know my limits, and very rarely do I push them to the breaking point of blacking out and losing control of my bodily functioning. Every other time but this, I was drinking alcohol. But on this particular experience, I trip harder than I ever tripped on LSD, mushrooms, DXM, salvia, etc. I've experimented in large amounts with most substances I've used, but on my first encounter with morning glory, I lived a dream for 4.5 hours and woke up 15 hours later, only to find myself in my roommate's swim shorts and my other roommate's dress shirt flipped inside out. Never have I heard of anything this bizarre and just fucking weird than what happened to me 2 nights ago when a few of my friends came back from a Chili Peppers concert in Denver and saved me one pod from a moonflower. I've wanted to try morning glory for a while, so when my friends told me about their crazy trip, I seized the opportunity. I knew that if I wanted to extract the chemical, it would take a while, and I've heard people eating them and still tripping, so that's what I decided around 7:40 p.m. I cut open the pokey green pod and found not even 100 bright orange seeds. I thought that they might need to be dried, but since S-Dog, Gassman, and Quasnout tripped balls in Denver by the same means of ingestion, I figured I would be in the clear. I scooped all the seeds into my mouth and munched them up for about 5 minutes until I was left with a nasty mush and swallowed it all down with Gatorade. With the amount that I took, I never expected that before I finally laid to rest that night, I would be wandering outside of my townhouse, naked, or taking sips off my bottle of Nivea aftershave. 20 minutes after ingestion, I noticed a slight difference in my perception. I was only able to notice the come up, which didn't stop. I never felt the come down because I was asleep during it. At first, I was really pleased with how I was feeling, but after about an hour of sitting around, watching TV, and bullshitting with my friends, I began to get irritated, partly because the effects weren't really increasing as much as I expected, and partly because I had to piss and couldn't. For the next hour, I started getting a little worried because I felt like I needed to take a leak. But despite all of my attempts of turning on the sink, flushing the toilet, and pushing like hell, I couldn't muster more than a few drops until 10:30-11 p.m., when I felt absolutely horrible from having dry mouth and started to feel almost nauseous. I also noticed my skin was a bright red color and felt extremely warm. Because of the low intensity of effects, I really didn't feel like being awake if I was just going to feel like shit all night and not experience anything more than a mild shift of perception, loss of some motor skills, and a few tracers. So, I decided to hit the hay early, and amazingly, I was able to piss just before I went to bed. I took 5 milligrams of melatonin and laid down feeling uncomfortable and restless, but eventually I succumbed to sleep, to the last of my conscious recollection. When I awoke at 7 p.m. the next day, I felt refreshed and more awake than I felt in a long time. The night before, I had the most vivid dreams I've ever had. During these dreams, There are several reoccurring themes that keep happening to me. Every time I would see Dirty D's face, he would ask me if I was doing alright, and I couldn't understand why he would ask me that, because I felt fine. So I look at him and say, yeah, of course, why wouldn't I be fine? I think he asked me that maybe 4 to 5 more times, getting more concerned each time, but every time I gave the same reply, or some other variation of the same. Another thing that kept pissing me off was that I fell down probably 5 times. All I remember is walking down my staircase, losing my balance, and stumbling/sliding before I would get to the bottom. I can remember one occurrence when I took 2 steps and rolled the rest of the way down the carpeted staircase. I don't remember any pain. I would also try to sit down wherever it was I thought I was, but only hit the ground with a hard thud. I think I did that twice, looking around afterwards for the person who pulled my chair out, only to find that there wasn't even a chair and I was sitting on the floor outside my kitchen. This last reoccurring theme that happened was the one that freaked the fuck out of me and really brought me back to reality. I remember talking to quite a few people throughout the whole experience, but not remembering what we were talking about most of the time. 3 times I was standing outside somewhere during the daytime and talking to about 10 to 15 people, recognizing only some, about God knows what. All 3 times I would notice one person sticking out in the crowd, and as I paid more attention to him, he became clearer and clearer. He was tall and had dark hair. He looked so familiar, but I just couldn't think of who this person was. When he was only a few feet away from me, I could tell that his lips were moving, and as I watched, I noticed his lips were moving as I was talking. Suddenly, it dawned on me like a wave of every feeling, good and bad, that I could feel. I was surprised, stunned, speechless, happy, scared, pissed off at myself, absolutely confused, and yet realized exactly what had happened. I was standing, shirtless in my bathroom, talking to myself in the mirror. I repeated this 3 times, getting more upset after each time of realizing what I was doing again. Throughout my dream, it seemed there was no chronological order to the events that were happening. Sometimes I would be standing outside on a grassy field or in a parking lot. Other times I would be in my apartment fiddling with something or standing in my closet looking for nothing. On one of my visits to the bathroom, B-Rod, one of my roommates, was watching me as I washed my hair with what I thought I did at the time was my bottle of aftershave. I only managed to rinse a little out of my hair before I dried it off with a towel. So, as my hair dried, it became hard and crusty. As B-Rod is still staring at me, I pick up the real bottle of aftershave, and just as the taste starts to fuck with my mouth, B-Rod takes it from me and scolds me like a dog. No! And I'm dumbfounded and sincerely clueless as to why B would do that, as if he did something wrong. The last major event I clearly remember was only a second's worth, but it was pretty significant. The only thing I recall is standing outside my walk-in closet, and there were people everywhere in my room. I looked at my friend Gaffsman, and he's yelling/laughing at me to put some clothes on, and I don't pay any attention to him at all. There are other minor details about my dreams that I will touch on, but when I woke up the next day, this is all I could consciously remember. Other than the vivid and weird dreams, I didn't think the morning glory did anything special, until I consulted my roommates. I woke up to S-Dog kicking the futon and told him about the crazy dreams I had the night before. After I described most of the clearer parts of my dream, S-Dog was already laughing his ass off as he stopped me and told me I wasn't dreaming. When I thought the dreams I actually remembered were fucked up, I was speechless, in disbelief, and almost frightened at the insanity that actually took place. Somehow, my entire trip, I was sleepwalking. I was told by 8 or so of my friends that I was incoherent and mumbling gibberish until almost 4 a.m., and even when I would manage to put a comprehensible sentence together, I would say something completely irrelevant to anything they were asking me. S-Dog was yelling at me for throwing a whole roll of TP in the toilet, and I responded, "I told you I didn't take your clothes out of the dryer and set them on fire." Throughout the night, I continued to go to the restroom, and as my friends and roommates began to understand the extent of how fucking gone I was, they started following and babysitting me a little closer. I was told at one point I I was standing in the corner of my downstairs bathroom talking to two of my friends, Seven and Gumby. Another time in the upstairs bathroom, as I kneeled on my hands and knees and stared into the toilet bowl, I told Filthy, I'm playing Need for Speed Most Wanted, and it's not good because the cops keep getting me. All throughout the night, I was seen moving my hands like I was playing with something, putting something together, or holding some object, even though I had nothing. I can see myself doing that because I've woken up at nights thinking I'm holding something and search for it in my bed until I realize I'm dreaming. The only thing I remember that night similar to playing with objects that weren't there was when I was lying in bed, no clue of what time it was, and I thought I had a cigarette in my hand. But when I couldn't find it, I searched my carpet frantically, looking for the butt, thinking I was going to set my room on fire. Earlier in the night, I was standing at my kitchen counter, messing with nothing, and my roommate, JP, asked me what I was doing. Apparently, I told him he needed to put a condom on an empty paper towel roll. I also told my friend Cece, I need a pipe, but you can never find any good pipes in Africa. I've never been out of the US. I was also talking to Cece in my closet by myself. Talking gibberish to random objects and people who weren't there was probably enough for my friends to handle, but as the night grew closer to morning, I began to lose grip of physical reality, throwing judgment out the window and functioning only on extremely short-term memory. I was told I could halfway answer questions if I only needed to say one word, but any more than that and I would add my own shit, according to B-Rod, traveling off on nonsense tangents and losing track of where I was and what I was doing. The night really started to go bad when I decided to take a shower. I don't remember a lot about it, but I can recall getting in and out of the shower with my clothes on quite a few times. I remember because I kept hitting my feet and shins on the metal tracks of the shower doors and stumbling forward due to the change in ground height. When I finally got in the shower naked, I stood there just peering over the shower doors at my friends, not saying a word and only rinsing my lower half. Then got out, shampooed my dry head, and washed it out in the sink. For the next 20 minutes, I was completely oblivious to the fact that I was butt-ass naked. Luckily everyone, except Filthy, who I still can't remember even being at my house, and Gassman had gone to a party. They were both sitting in my room when I got out of the bathroom, and I walked in dragging my towel. I went into my closet to change and came out, still naked and completely in another world. Gaffsman and Filthy were laughing their asses off at me and telling me to put some clothes on. Something finally must have registered, because I bent down, grabbed my invisible boxers at my ankles, and pulled them up, snapping the invisible, elastic waistband to make sure they were on. I was told that not once was I really aware that I was even fucked up. I walked around and did whatever I wanted without giving a fuck about what other people thought. I honestly don't remember one conversation or anything out of the ordinary in my behavior, but in actuality, my behavior was anything but ordinary. After wandering my room naked for a while, I walked out of the room and downstairs, leaving my friends crying in laughter. It wasn't until they heard the front door close when they realized how truly out of my fucking mind I was. I walked halfway out in the street until Filthy finally grabbed me and got me to walk inside. Once safely inside, they convinced me to put some clothes on, so I just grabbed some I saw on the ground in front of the door. There isn't too much I remember after that, but I do remember JP coming back from a party with a bunch of people. Filthy, Gassman, and I were sitting on the couch when they arrived, and all I really remember is JP complimenting me on my clothes and laughing at how ridiculous I looked, out of my mind in blue flower swimming trunks and an unbuttoned inside-out dress shirt. I remember the clothes pretty clearly because I didn't understand why I was wearing them, but I accepted it anyways. I remember looking down at myself and noticing my shirt was unbuttoned a couple times, but because it was inside out and I didn't realize it, the shirt was simply impossible for me to button up. My shorts also confused me quite a bit, but I didn't worry too much about it because I thought I was dreaming. S-Dog said I was playing with my drawstrings a lot, and I remember it, but at the time, I thought it was my cigarette and something was wrong with it. I'm not entirely sure when I finally passed out. I thought I went to bed before midnight, but apparently I was up until 4 a.m. or so. The trip was so completely different from anything I've ever experienced. There was no spiritual enlightenment or grand answers of understanding at the end of it all. Only a horrific feeling of confusion and a much greater appreciation and respect for the power of nature and everything it creates. To be under the control of a force that powerful and not even realize it had affected me is truly humbling. I have full intentions of trying morning glory again someday, but I'm sure as hell going to dry out the seeds this time and definitely not use moonflower, because I'm fairly sure that was the reason I was so out of my mind. I can handle traveling to weird organic worlds of spontaneous colorful forms and crazy creatures because I'm aware of and understand what I'm perceiving and know I'm physically passed out in some unsightly, embarrassing position. But when I get pissed off at my roommates for stopping me from drinking aftershave, don't have the slightest idea that I'm even walking around naked and can't even recognize my own face in the mirror, I know I've overstepped some fucked up boundaries of consciousness.